gentlemen, welcome to the Richard Nixon Library. We gather today with a remarkable group of leaders to commemorate the historic trip to China that President Nixon took nearly 46 years ago, and to celebrate the opening of this new presentation, a strong collaboration between the Nixon Foundation, Xinhua News Agency, and the China National Tourism Council. I'd like to begin by recognizing some guests that are here this morning. First, Edward Nixon. Ed is the youngest of the 5 Nixon brothers. Incidentally, he's the only one who didn't live in the little White House just outside these windows. Ed is a geologist by training and a writer by avocation. He was particularly close to his older brother Dick, and he has written a superb family history of the Nixons. Ed is a member of the Nixon Foundation's board of directors, and we're always delighted and honored when he visits us from his home in Seattle. We're particularly proud to have him here to share this very important day. Mike Elsey. Mike is the director of the Nixon Library and Museum, which is one of 13 presidential libraries run by the National Archives and Record Administration. Dr. Ming Xie is an extraordinarily accomplished scientist and visionary, for whom the China Gallery and our new Nixon Presidential Museum will soon be named. Thank you. Ruth Shannon. Ruth is a member of the original board of directors of the Richard Nixon Foundation and a treasured friend of both the Nixon family and me. John Gong. John is a prominent supporter of the Nixon Foundation and champion of all things Nixon. Thank you. Charlie Jiang is a well-known patron of many causes in Orange County who we're very pleased to have with us today. Thank you. We also have our good friends from South Coast Plaza, David Grant, and manager Brian Yuan, Director of Domestic and International Markets. We're grateful for their ongoing partnership and their friendship. Thank you, David. We're delighted to have the Mayor of Yorba Linda, Jean Hernandez, with us today. City Manager Pu Lone, and Assistant City Manager Dave Christensen. I'd also like to welcome the many representatives from travel and tourism companies. We look forward to working with each of you to increase the number of visitors here at the Nixon Library. And that brings me to our guest of honor, the newly appointed Consul General of the People's Republic of China in Los Angeles, Ambassador Zhang Ping. We're delighted to welcome him to the United States, and especially California. And we're honored that he accepted our invitation to visit the Nixon Library for his first visit to Orange County. We hope that this will be the first of many visits, and you will always be a welcome guest here. Today we remember the extraordinary advances in understanding and friendship that began 46 years ago this month, when President Nixon made his historic journey to China. In his first toast in Shanghai, he called it the week that changed the world. Only 10 days after his inauguration on January 20th, 1969, President Nixon directed his national security advisor, Dr. Henry Kissinger, to explore the possibility of opening relations with the People's Republic of China. As the old saying goes, timing is everything. And Chinese leadership were also considering the possibility of expanding relations. In the spring of 1971, a long-haired player of the American national ping pong team stepped aboard the wrong bus after a match at the World Table Championships in Japan. He found himself on a bus with the entire Chinese ping pong team, and they enjoyed a lively ride back to their hotel. Upon learning of this incident, the Chinese leadership invited the entire American team to fly to China, and 4 days later, they became the first American delegation to visit China since 1949. And that is how ping-pong diplomacy was born. In 1971, there were 2 secret trips by Dr. Kissinger to China, appropriately called Polo 1 and Polo 2. There were also a series of hints dropped by President Nixon that were completely missed by the press and the public, and even members of his own White House staff. For example, on July 6, 1971, President Nixon gave an address in Kansas City to Midwestern news and media executives. The address was supposed to focus exclusively on the administration's domestic priorities, when suddenly President Nixon began talking about China. Of the Chinese people, he said, they are creative, they are productive, they are one of the most capable people in the world. And 800 million Chinese are going to be, inevitably, an enormous economic power, with all that means in terms of what they could be in other areas if they move in that direction. The news executives listened with interest and totally missed the import and importance of what the president was saying. Only 9 days later, President Nixon went on television and shocked America and surprised the world by announcing that he would be visiting China in the very near future. He concluded his remarks by saying that I will undertake what I deeply hope will become a journey for peace not just for our generation, but for the future generations on this earth we share together. We now have a relationship that has grown and flourished since 1972. I now invite you to turn your attention to the screen for a short film that details the China trip in 1972.
On July 15, 1971, President Nixon requested time on national TV.
The announcement I shall now read is being issued simultaneously in Peking and in the United States. Knowing of President Nixon's expressed desire to visit the People's Republic of China, Premier Zhou Enlai, on behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, has extended an invitation to President Nixon to visit China.
The effect was electric. The idea was almost unimaginable. The Washington Post said, if Mr. Nixon had revealed he was going to the moon, he could not have flabbergasted his world audience more. The Cold War was raging. In Southeast Asia, China was North Vietnam's ally, and Richard Nixon's credentials as an anti-communist were long-standing and impeccable. But in the fall of 1967, Nixon wrote a seminal article about Asia after Vietnam. Taking the long view, he wrote, we simply cannot afford to leave China forever outside the family of nations. There is no place on this small planet for 1 billion of its potentially most able people to live in angry isolation. In January 1969, in his first inaugural address, President Nixon confirmed his determination to change America's policy toward China.
We seek an open world, a world in which no people, great or small, will live in angry isolation.
On February 17, 1972, after 2 years of secret and delicate negotiations, the President and First Lady were on their way to China. Premier Zhou Enlai was waiting at Beijing. In 1954, the U.S. Secretary of State had snubbed the then foreign minister. Nixon wrote in his memoirs, I knew that Joe had been deeply insulted by Foster Dulles' refusal to shake hands with him. When I reached the bottom of the steps, therefore, I made a point of extending my hand as I walked toward him. When our hands met, one era ended and another began. A few hours later, the President met with Chairman Mao Zedong. The 79-year-old leader was in frail health, but the lively hour-long meeting included philosophy, history, and banter. Mao said, I voted for you during your last election. Nixon said, I think the most important thing to note is that in America, at least at this time, those on the right can do what those on the left can only talk about. Throughout his career, Richard Nixon always reserved time for strategic thinking, making and refining extensive notes on yellow pads. In preparation for his China trip, he considered all the possible permutations of policy involved. what they want, what we want, what we both want. At the Great Hall of the People, the President and the Premier exchanged toasts.
Said in your toast, the Chinese people are a great people. The American people are a great people. We have at times in the past been enemies. We have great differences today. What brings us together is that we have common interests which transcend those differences.
At the end of the trip, diplomatic ground was broken with the Shanghai communique. After covering the points on which both sides had reached agreement, they proceeded to detail their different positions on all the other outstanding issues. Nixon referred to this in his final toast to Shanghai on the eve of his departure.
That communique will make headlines around the world tomorrow. But what we have said in that communique is not nearly as important as what we will do in the years ahead. We have been here a week. This was the week that changed the world.
During a visit to the Great Wall, the President reflected on the purpose and potential of the trip.
When one stands there and sees the wall going to the peak of this mountain, and I think that you would have to conclude that this is a great wall and that it had to be built by a great people. I think one of the results of our trip, we hope, may be that the walls that are erected, whether they are physical walls like this or whether they are other walls, ideology or philosophy, will not divide peoples in the world. That peoples, regardless of their differences in backgrounds and their philosophies, will have an opportunity to communicate with each other, to know each other, and to share with each other those particular endeavors that will mean peaceful progress in the years ahead.
Well, goodbye.
After President Nixon returned home, Clare Boothe Luce told him that 1,000 years from now, they will say of you, he went to China. And it began 40 years ago with a week that changed the world.
Please welcome Mr. Xinhua Hang, the Los Angeles Bureau Chief of Xinhua News Agency. Mr. Hang has been our partner for several months in planning this superb new traveling exhibition, and I invite him to share a little bit about it with us now.
First, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed Mr. Velbert and Mr. Isaac and Mr. Zhang Ping, Chinese Consul General, Mr. Sun Lushan, Deputy Consul General, and Ms. Wu Ning, the Chief of China's National Tourism Administration of Los Angeles office, and honored guests and friends. I'm truly honored to stand here today and to introduce a very special travel photo exhibition about a journey that changed the world. I'm a professional journalist. Not surprisingly, I love to travel. I have traveled extensively throughout China, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Europe, and now the United States. I have always believed that travel helps give meaning and a greater understanding to our lives. Because if you travel, especially on your own, you gather special memory of exciting new places and beautiful vistas that you never would have seen. Unique experience you never would have had, and you create unforeseen connection along the way with strangers who one day could be your friend. You also discover as much as yourself as you do to the country and the people you visit along the way. But though all journeys are unique, some rise to the level of historic significance because the person who undertook them had the courage to blaze a new trail for the others, to the rest of the world to follow. Without doubt, President Nixon's journey to China in 1972, as the first sitting U.S. president to ever visit China, was just such a journey of unique and far-reaching historic importance. His groundbreaking trip through Beijing, Shanghai, and Hangzhou, three of China's most beloved cities, paved the way for a bright new future for the great nations of China and the United States to become economic partners and friends. While I was preparing the exhibition with our excellent designer, Professor Chi, it felt like two of us were moving back through a portal in time. When President Nixon set up the week that changed the world 46 years ago, neither of us have never been born. Yet, we sift through hundreds of photos to recreate his historic journey that collected by the Nixon Museum and Library and the Xinhua News Agency. And we both felt like we were right there, beside him, feeling and experiencing firsthand those extraordinary moments that shaped history. Traveling back in time, we were struck by the stark comparison between those archive photos and the similar images shot just last year. The differences are striking. The images were of the same places in the same three cities, but today's images symbolize a different country now. As our nation has learned from our Western neighbors and built our strengths to grow and prosper over the intervening years, we hope you will feel, as we do, that while photos do not actually say anything as words do, they actually say everything. As living testimony to the medical impact and the power of journalism, photojournalism, we need seek no further than Mr. Nick Wood. He's sitting here. As a world-class, award-winning photojournalist, Mr. Wood is recognized as one of the finest photographers in history. He won the Pulitzer Prize for the sports news photography in 1973, and the same year, the World Press Photo of the Year for his gripping image called The Terror of War. He understands, as I hope all you will, that when I call this special travel exhibition, I mean it in the sense of deeper journey, a journey through history, a journey that makes history, and a journey that will continue to send ripples far into our future, where William Shakespeare has said, the past is prologue. To conclude, if any of you want a comfortable and exciting journey to China for pleasure, for business, today is a good opportunity. And I suggest you can speak with the talented Ms. Wu Ning. She is an expert in this field. Thank you very much for this great honor, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the exhibition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hank. Ed Nixon has visited China more than 40 times and has had the opportunity to visit many cities and meet many people and make many friends. As I said earlier, Ed is an active and valued member of our board of directors of the Nixon Foundation. He is a loyal friend and a wise counselor. We're very fortunate to have him with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ed Nixon.
Welcome to the Nixon Library. Welcome especially from my heart, because as my brother encouraged me for all my life, get acquainted with people on the other side of the door. If it happens to be a wall, find out how to get around it and get acquainted with the folks on the other side. Make friends, understand why there may be differences, work on the differences without raising arms. So with that in mind, I thank you all for being here today, because I think that's what you're doing. You've come here to get acquainted. We all need to get better acquainted and find out what we have that's similar and what is different. The differences are always there. That's the way life is. But we're all humans. We have brains that should be used for peace. Thanks again for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. You always bless us with your presence. Very special. Our guest of honor is Ambassador Zhang Ping, the newly appointed Consul General of the People's Republic of China in Los Angeles. Ambassador Zhang is a distinguished career diplomat. Although he's new to Los Angeles, he has served at diplomatic posts in New York City and Washington, D.C. Most recently, he was the Vice President of Chinese People's Institute of Foreign Affairs, and then the Chinese ambassador to the Republic of Fiji. This is Ambassador Zhang's first visit to Orange County in his new role, and we are deeply honored by his decision to come here to Yorba Linda and the Nixon Library. The Nixon Foundation has a special relationship with the Consul General in Los Angeles. We were greatly honored by the presence of your predecessor, Ambassador Liu Zhan, and by Ambassador Xiaowei Kai at the new library opening ceremonies last October of 2016. Mr. Ambassador, we look forward to continuing the work, working closely with you, Deputy Consul Sun, and your very able and capable staff. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency Ambassador Zhang Ping.
Thank you very much. Respected Mr. Baragat, President of Nixon Foundation. Respected Mr. Ed Nixon. The Director Michael Easy. Respected Mr. Walker and Ms. Wu Ning, ladies and gentlemen, friends. It gives me a great pleasure to visit the Nixon Library and attend its opening ceremony of the photo exhibition, Building a New Bridge, President Nixon's Legacy in 3 Chinese Cities, jointly sponsored by the Nixon Library, Xinhua News Agency, Los Angeles Bureau, and the Los Angeles Office of China National Tourism Administration. First of all, please allow me to extend, on behalf of the Chinese Consulate in Los Angeles, warm congratulations on the successful opening of this photo exhibition. I also wish to thank Richard Nixon Foundation and the library, and President Baragat in particular, for your great hospitality in arranging my tour of the library, which enables me to learn the legacy of President Nixon and revisit the history of the modernization process of China-US relationship. This photo exhibition presents the changes that have taken place in the 3 cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and Hangzhou, since President Nixon's historical visit, which changed the world in 1972. Looking at the contrasting images of the 1970s and the present day, I guess everyone would be amazed to find how big these changes are in these 3 cities. Indeed, changes in China nowadays are so immense and unprecedented that no one
would have imagined 46 years ago. Similarly, changes in China-US relationship are also so immense and unprecedented that no one would have ever thought of 46 years ago. China's development is a result of 4 decades-long reform and opening up. It is attributed to the fact that China has found a development path that fits its own national conditions. It also benefits from the sound international environment which China can focus its attention on nation development. The opening of normalization process of China-US relations improved the strategic external environment for both countries. It changed the political and economic landscape in the Asia-Pacific region and the world at large, heralding the end of the Cold War, making it possible for China to proceed reform and open up to the outside world. At present, China-US relationship is standing at a new historical starting point, facing new opportunities of development as well as various challenges. To what direction the China-US relationship should go is a question that concerns many people who care about this relationship. To find answers to that question, a revisit to the history of President Nixon's visit to China 46 years ago may give us some food for thought. 46 years ago, with the extraordinary strategic vision and political courage of the leaders of both countries, Chairman Mao Zedong, Premier Zhou Enlai, President Nixon, and Dr. Henry Kissinger, China and the United States made happen that historical handshake across the Pacific, reopening the door for exchanges between China and the United States. As President Nixon stated, what brings us together is the common interest which transcend vast differences between our two countries. Today, with the growing common interests between our two countries, more than ever before, do we see our two countries so closely connected with each other. In the past 4 decades or so, despite various twists and turns, China-US relationship has achieved unprecedented progress both in width and depth. In 2017, our bilateral trade volume exceeded $580 billion, 200 times bigger than the figure when we established diplomatic relations. China has become the US fastest growing export market outside NAFTA. As far as Southern California is concerned, 1/3 of our total bilateral trade volume goes through Los Angeles Customs District. Over 600 Chinese enterprises have invested in Southern California, with total amount of investment surpassing $10 billion. Last year, Chinese tourist arrivals in Los Angeles reached 1.1 million, which brings about $1.2 billion of revenue to the local economy. Being the world's two largest economies and permanent members of the UN Security Council, the close coordination and cooperation in international affairs by China and the United States play an irreplaceable role for world peace, stability, and development. Our common interests are far greater than the differences. We should take a constructive approach to manage those differences. We should transcend ideological differences, reject zero-sum Cold War mentality, and work hard to enlarge the pie of common interest through win-win cooperation. This is what we have learned from the history of normalization of US-China relationship, and this is what President Nixon's legacy is about. Peace and development remain the core of our day, as well as the shared aspiration of the human society. China is a builder of world peace, contributor to the global development, and maintainer of international order. China remains committed to the path of peaceful development and firmly adheres to the opening up strategy of mutual benefit and win-win results. China is endeavored to build a community of shared interest for mankind and expand the convergence of interest with other countries. China will never seek hegemony. China's development is not a threat, but an opportunity to international society. We look forward to making joint efforts with the US side to carry forward the strategic vision and political wisdom of the leaders of all generations and follow the principles of mutual respect, mutual benefit, and focusing on cooperation to build a long-lasting, healthy, and stable China-US relationship for the benefits of people in both countries and the people in the world as large. The calendar New Year has already started, and the Chinese Lunar New Year Festival and the Chinese Lunar New Year is coming soon. On this occasion, I would like to extend my cordial New Year greetings and best wishes to all the guests present here. May the China-US relationship achieve new progress in this new year. Finally, I wish the photo exhibition a great success. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'd now like to invite Dr. Ming Hsieh to join us on stage as we officially open this new special exhibit.